Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Huntsman Show. Well, it's actually Die Huntsman Show, but Terence isn't that good in Afrikaans.
12 years of Afrikaans in school, and I can just about sing our national anthem. So.
Only the first line.
Just I mean, I go hard with the English verse. Let me just tell you that. The last
it's like when you watch rugby at some like an Afrikaans, like a predominantly Afrikaans community, and like the Afrikaans part of the anthem starts
just
and
the volume
like
goes up. So I'm very quiet for the first 2/3, and then let us live and strive for freedom. I'm belting that part out.
But anyway,
it's my dying shame. It's my dying shame. But yeah.
Oh man, it's not a shame. You're my second English guest, so I'm proud to be diversifying my podcast. Man.
Yes, nice, good job.
But anyway, everyone, welcome, and I'm going to introduce you now to Terence, which is also known as Afrodaddy, but I'm going to let him do his own introduction so you can hear from him. But before we start, guys, please like, comment, subscribe, do all those things, hit the bell. It's actually nice saying that in English because it's so difficult, like telling people to Lady Klokkie in Afrikaans, you know. Welcome to Terence. He's going to do his introduction. It's good to have you on the show, man. I'm really excited about our conversation. And shoot, man, introduce yourself and give us a brief background, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me on Die Huntsman. I was super excited to see that you had started this like a few months ago, because you and I have had numerous chats just about life and stuff in general in the past, and I'm like, this is the guy that needs to be having these conversations with people. So I'm really excited to be here too. And I'm like you said, my name is Terence. I'm a blogger and a vlogger and a podcaster and all of the content stuff under the name Afrodaddy, where I've been spending the last 7 years talking about fatherhood, talking about parenting, trying to encourage dads to take the role of fatherhood seriously, and also trying to encourage other people to support dads, you know, so talking to moms about what's going on in their partner's head, like why does he behave in that way, why is he struggling with these things, and how can we help dads be better. So that's been kind of my purpose for the last 7 years. I have 2 kids. Liam, my oldest, is 9 now, and Eli is 18 months younger than him, so very close in age. Eli's turning 8 in a month's time, and I'm married to the wonderful Julie, who keeps me in check and keeps me getting better. So she's my guide, and my very wise advisor. So based in Cape Town. As you can probably hear from the way I speak, dude.
That's more Durban, isn't it? More Durban, like dude.
Oh, dude is more,
dude, brah.
I think Cape Town's more like schwa.
Oh, dude, we all love Cape Town. I can tell you, everyone loves Cape Town, man. Everyone loves Cape. I actually, just in your introduction, I forgot that one boy's name is Eli, and I also have my second son is, or my first son is also called Eli, which is, well, just cool.
It was a popular name a few years ago, and I think we all tapped into the same.
So Liam and Eli, and they are 9 and 7. Yeah,
9 and 7. Yeah.
Okay, awesome, man.
Yes, so I had 2 under 2 for a few years, at the beginning, and that was hectic.
I can hear, dude. So my 3, I've got 3 kids, and they are all like two years apart. So the first one is also 9. The eldest is also 9. Then I've got Eli's also 7, or turning 7 this year. and then we've got Kai. His full name is Alakai, and he's turning 5 this year. But I know the struggle, man. I know the struggle.
Yes. Of having like a newborn and a toddler.
Yeah.
And you've had that for like 3 years longer than I did. So that's why you got that. That's why you got that gray hair over there on your chin. That's what that is.
Well, yeah, we'll talk about why you have yours there. No, so the first part, like the first 2 years, like having Isla, which is my eldest, my daughter, and having Eli, that wasn't that tough, because girls are way easier than boys. Like raising girls, dude, like to me personally, it's like way easier raising girls, because they are like self-efficient, and like they want to do things themselves, and they, you know, she gets her own food, she gets her own like cool drink when she's thirsty, she gets her own water, she puts on the, you know, if she wants, she does herself, you know, she does her own thing. Like the boys are like, dude, it's like,
and this is the thing, right? Like I don't want to like assign gender stereotypes to people, but I have 2 boys, we have friends who have 2 girls, and there's just something about boys. I'm not sure if it's us or the actual boys, but like the boys would be running around crazy, and then we'd go visit our friends with girls of the same age, and they quietly playing with dolls, and they're drawing, and they're doing artwork like in the corner quietly. Like, what? How are they sitting still? I don't understand why they just you left them in a spot, and you come back in 20 minutes and they're still in that spot. How is that possible?
Dude,
so that blows my mind about girls.
No, but it's you know, that's, I have no problem in telling people, like, dude, like I feel so blessed that my first kid was a girl. You know, it's like it was kind of
just eased you in.
Like the perfect introduction into what's coming next. You know, next season is gonna be tough, bro. It's like
yeah, I mean that was my experience with Liam, who from the outset was super active, like super energetic. I wouldn't say hyper, but just like it required a lot of physical input constantly to kind of keep him under control. It was like a nuclear warhead that you're always trying to just manage the energy.
And you're hiding the codes, hiding the
exactly. You're just like, and like, what do we do? And you're trying to like release steam the whole time. And by the end of the day, he's still wide awake, and you're just like sitting on the couch, completely broken. Physically exhausted, completely broken. So yeah, that was a sudden awakening for me into fatherhood.
Yeah, man. So you've been doing this for 6 years, you said? Am I correct? 6 years.
I think it's 7 years now. I think it's
7 years.
This year's 7 years. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Because I just a while ago I watched that video of like how you take care of your afro with your mom.
Oh, wow, that was back in the day.
Yeah, I can see, because your boys are like really young, and I see them coming into the video at the end, and you're like, you're supposed to be asleep.
yeah, and they're like just about walking, they're still kind of toddling around. I occasionally watch this video just to remember what they were like, because I'm not sure if you experienced this with your kids, but I feel like I'm blinking and then they're bigger and stronger, and they're having more complex conversations suddenly. I have these moments where I'll be sitting and talking to my son, and I'll be like, wait, I'm having a full conversation with you, and you were my baby yesterday. Or at least that's what it feels like. So so I think that hair one where I got my mom to try and clean my hair I think that video was probably about 6 years ago.
Pushing
6 years ago.
I can see that obviously a long time ago, but it's such a cool video, and it's exactly like you said, like, and that's probably one of the benefits to me about like doing what we do, is like making videos and putting content out there, is you can always go back, revisit, and see how things have changed, how you've grown, how your kids have grown. I just went through my old YouTube channel like probably a couple of days ago, and I just saw like some of the thumbnails with my daughter like still having this curly bush, and and like maybe 2-3 years old, and it just like warms your heart and takes you back. And then again, like you said, you come to this place and you're sitting and you don't realize, it's kind of like in those moments, it's like, oh my word, it's a wake up call for you. Like, how did you get from there to here? And then just realizing the importance of actually having those like deep conversations with your kids, because you kind of have to, and I want to get your thoughts on this, because you kind of have to, those realizations come because you need to realize that you need to start taking this relationship seriously now, more serious than, obviously it's serious all the time, but it's like you have to start becoming that person who becomes their source, and the thing where they get their insight and wisdom and all that stuff from. So I wanted to get your take on this, because I think that shift needs to happen. It's kind of like a climax, that moment when you realize, oh my word, you've grown. Now now the serious parenting actually starts.
Now we're in a new phase. Yeah. I think it's because it's a hard switch to make, because for the first 5-6 years of their life, we're really focused on their physical development. Are they walking? Are they physically talking? Do they have their fine motor skills? Are they gross motor skills? Is the nutrition correct? Like, that's our day-to-day concern for our children, is like that physical. It's very physical.
Yeah.
And then as they get into primary school, and it's great. I'm finding now in grade 2 and grade 3.
Yeah.
Now you need to start, like you say, you need to start like worrying about their mental side, the psychological side, the spiritual side.
Yeah.
And I think we're quite uncomfortable. Like, we're in a generation where our parents didn't really take on difficult issues with us at that age. It was like, talking about things like, how your body works and what consent is like in sex and all of these questions that we would have had, that we're getting wrong information from our friends, as opposed to our parents being our main source of information.
Yes.
And so our generation, you and I, we're having to like learn how to be, like you say, that we should be the primary inputs for all of these things.
Yeah.
We should be the people they come to, or not even they shouldn't even have to be coming to us to ask information. They should just be getting it from us.
Yeah.
But knowing where, like, what to, like what level to pitch it at, I found we struggle with, because so for us, for instance, Liam, my oldest, he's adopted. And we know that throughout an adoptee's life, they have questions, they want to engage with these issues. It's a lot to grapple with, that people who aren't adopted, we don't have those issues. But knowing what level to pitch it at, that it helps them understand and helps them engage with it in a way that's actually beneficial, as opposed to like stressing him out more. We find that that's that's a difficult thing, because every child is different in that regard. Some children are at this age very mature and able to talk about, maybe not, they wouldn't use the term mental health, but like how they're feeling and their emotions and what made them feel good and what made them feel bad, and they can really engage with that. Often, unfortunately, but often those are girls. Boys aren't really shown how to do that. And so really trying to like make sure that we are the primary inputs for all of these parts of your life is important. We don't want them to be getting we don't want the first conversation they have of these big issues to be at school from a teacher where we don't really know what the teacher's saying, or at their friend's house where we don't know what kind of stuff their friend, who's equally dumb, because it's the same age, they also don't know, and they've heard a thing, they've seen something on TV, or their older brother has said something that they've misunderstood, and now our kid has bad information too. So it's it is that balance of pitching the difficult conversations at the right level, because we don't want to make them uncomfortable, but we also want them to know that, like, no, your family is the safe space where you can have the difficult conversations.
Exactly.
No one's going to embarrass you. No one's going to make you feel like you're dumb for asking the question.
Yes.
this is where you come to for that knowledge.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, so that's been a big switch. I agree with you. Like, it is that switch from like the physical development to the mental development, and the mental development, it's a whole other ball game. That's
Yeah,
just
man.
another level of parenting.
It is, and I think you touched on a couple of like really like good points. Is first of all, we live in the information age. You know, if my 9-year-old, we gave her a cell phone for her 9th birthday, but it's like, you know, it's bound to the house. She can't take it out, and it's only limited to like Wi-Fi connection, and we like, you know, we have to monitor that thing so closely. You know, she's got a WhatsApp number, but only you know, her parents and her grandparents has a number. But even that can sometimes be inappropriate. Like, you know, you have to monitor even that. But like just on the information point, and what you're saying is, like, I had a conversation with another, you know, one of the other guests on the show a couple of weeks ago, and we spoke about this because this guy's entire, you know, he does similar to what you do, but he does it with like troubled youth. So he talks about fatherhood and how important the father figure is, but he does it like obviously with troubled youth. He literally goes to schools and tell them, like, give me your 5 worst kids, and I want
Wow.
yeah, and he works with them, and it's, you know, obviously it's all boys, and so he takes them on like camps and does like teaches them how to fish, teaches them how to hunt, teaches them about, like, you know, obviously have these like sexual conversations, like, you know, what do you do with your body? How does it work? Not how to use it. He made this joke. He says he doesn't teach them how to use it, but he teaches them how it works. And it's like, it's so necessary, because many of these kids, like, he didn't mention something, but I'm in the actual video, but he did mention to me in the past, like, probably 85 to 90% of these kids grew up without like proper father figures in their house. So those things weren't like, wasn't passed on to them. And and that's the importance of us, you know, of dads playing that role of passing on the you know, the information that is necessary for that kid's emotional, spiritual, physical, you know, growth, and you know, you get what I'm saying. I can't get on the word now. So rather than those sources, like coming from like the internet and coming from, you know, friends and brothers and sisters and uncles and aunts or whatever, you know, it has to come from the parents.
And I think the crucial thing that maybe our parents didn't need to worry about so much, because again, we didn't have access to as much misinformation as our kids currently do, and will have more, is that we need to make sure that our kids know that we are the place that they can have these conversations, that we're not it's not a place of shame. It's not like naughty to have this conversation with your parents, that you can talk and ask anything, and we will give you a respectful response, you know. And that's a relationship thing as well, right? Like making sure that your kids can trust you to talk about these things, because you know, like with the example with your daughter's phone, eventually it's going to get to a point where you're not going to be able to monitor every single bit of information that comes into her brain, right? You're not going to be able to monitor every conversation she has. It's just it's going to be impossible. And you're going to have to trust that she's able to, that you've trained enough to know that this isn't right, or doesn't feel right. And B, she knows that, oh, wait a second, something's happened that's made me feel uncomfortable. I'm going to talk to dad, because dad's the place that's safe, you know. And that's so there's a lot more emphasis on like conversation and relationship, I think, than our parents maybe needed to have with us.
And I think that
which is harder. It's harder.
It is hard. And I think that's the thing, is we, as you know, we tend to shy away from the uncomfortable, and we tend to shy away from the difficult. And like you said, like these conversations are uncomfortable and they are awkward and they are difficult, but that's exactly why we need to show them that we are the place that those difficult conversations need to happen, because rather us than someone else. Like I love what you're saying, like we have to cultivate the environment for them to know that this is the place where I have these difficult conversations. So as soon as she comes, or one of my kids or your kids or whatever comes to a place where it gets uncomfortable, they know that where they can retreat to. And so I love that, man. That's a really good insight. I love that.
I mean, that was I was chatting on a radio interview for Father's Day, and the last question was, in the future, when your kids talk about you, what would you love for your kids to say about you? And there were two other dads in the conversation, and the one dad said, you know, that I wanted to know that he didn't take himself very seriously, and that he was able to have fun, which I totally agreed with. I can't remember what the second guy said, but I said I would love for them to be able to say, my dad was my safe space.
Yeah,
that's ultimately, yes, he provided. Yes, he was. He worked hard to make sure that we had food on the table.
Yeah.
Yes, he was fun to be around, and he always kicked the ball around with me, and all those things. That I want to tick those boxes. But ultimately, it's exactly what you're saying. I want them to know that when the poop hits the fan, they can call dad.
Yeah.
If they're at a party somewhere and they're a teenager and they're like, "This is getting," I shouldn't have been at this party. My dad doesn't know I'm here, but now I'm feeling unsafe. They know that they can call me and I will pick them up wherever they are, and it'll be okay. Like that's ultimately what I want. And again, you know, like you're saying, it starts now. It's that's you don't just get that when they're teenagers.
Yeah.
You have to show them when they're 7, 8, 9, 10 that's the tone of the relationship. So
yeah, man. I was sitting here. Well, my family is away, so I'm alone at home because I needed to work, and they're on a farm just out, you know, a couple of hours from our house. And I was walking, just walking around in the house yesterday afternoon. I can't remember what I was doing, but basically I thought, like, okay, so I've got nothing to do. Like, I've got no responsibilities except for some work, but there's no kids. And there's you know, obviously my wife is with them, so there's no wife. So what am I going to do? And I thought, like, okay, I'm going to watch a movie. And then I thought, like, no, I don't feel like watching a movie. And then it just clicked in my head, like, we don't get excited anymore because of the influx of information. Like, I can sit in front of my computer because I've got a 2 monitor setup. So I work on the one, and whilst I'm working on the one, I'm busy looking at YouTube videos, researching people, researching my guests, doing all that stuff. And I sit in front of the TV the whole day. So, but when I was young, you know, when we were young, you would remember we had open time. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes, 5 to 7, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. That was your moment.
Yeah, man. That was like, you know, the entire family, dinner had to be ready. The work had to be done. Like, when 5 o'clock comes, we're sitting, like 5 to 5, we're sitting in front of that TV and watching that Technicolor screen.
Yes, waiting for it to come into focus. I remember those.
Yeah, man. And it's like it just hit me, like, you know, nowadays it's so hard to get excited about stuff because you have instant gratification everywhere. And that's the environment we're raising our kids in. Like, it's like when we take our kid, for instance, to the store, they want a toy, you know? It's like, I want this toy. Like, no, you're not getting a toy today. Like, and then they mad at you. You go home, next day you go and buy bread and milk at the filling station or whatever. I want a toy. Like, dude, you know, it's just like everything is instant gratification. Like,
I mean, we used to have to wait, you know, if we had a favorite show and it came on once a week, or even if it came on every day, you'd have to wait till 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
And then you'd watch the show. And if you weren't there at 4 o'clock, you missed the episode.
Exactly.
Like, it never came back.
No catch up, man. No catch up.
No catch. And you know, it's school holidays at the moment, and our kids have you know, we have all of the streaming. We just got all of the streaming. and I'm explaining to my
Guilty.
boys when I was at school holidays, between 7 a.m. and like 2 p.m., it was just infomercials. And you couldn't choose what you wanted to watch. There wasn't, yes, you maybe had DSTV, or you maybe had like the SABC channels, but there was nothing on TV.
Yeah.
You couldn't decide, oh, I want to watch the show right now, because that show wasn't on.
Yeah.
And so there is a real thing, I think, with being bored. Like, I hated being bored back in the day, but I hated it so much that when I was bored, I would work out new toys, work out new games, work out new ways to be creative. I would build things and read and do all those things that now we have to actually artificially create boredom for our kids, because it's important. Like they need the space where they are actively engaging their brains to work out how to entertain themselves. Yeah, because I agree with you. I mean, they have access. I mean, literally the other day they were like, "Oh, Dad, there's nothing to watch," and I'm like, "You have access to every show that's ever been made, ever. You cannot tell me there's nothing to watch."
Exactly.
Like they're so complacent. They don't even want to like look for new things.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, you guys have no idea. I watched the same VCR version of Lion King 2 a billion times, because that was the only VCR we had. And after like the 50th time, it started to get all warped, so the songs would stretch out. Like you guys don't understand how bad it was.
I remember.
You know? And that, you know, and I mean, I wasn't an only child, but my brother was 6 years older than me, and my sister was 14 years old. So I was effectively, by the time I got to school, I was effectively like an only child.
Yeah.
So most of my school holidays were spent alone, you know, trying to find ways to entertain myself. They at least have a friend in the house with them that's a similar age, like they could do anything.
Yeah.
So it is really important to us to, you know, we're not like no screen time ever, and we're not like hectic about screen time, but it is like, guys, you've been playing Xbox and been watching TV for an hour and a half. You have to have at least the same amount of time off the screen now. And I don't care what you do. Like, you have Lego, you have your books, you can tidy the room if you want, you can play in the garden if you want. Like, we work really hard to have a nice sized garden. You know, in Cape Town, it's almost impossible to do that. So like I work hard every day so that you can have a garden to run around in, use the garden. Yeah, man. So it really is. And again, our parents didn't have to worry about that, because well, there wasn't an internet. There was nothing else for them to for them to like have to take us away from.
Yeah, dude. It's like I my wife keeps sending me like pictures and stuff, and you know, it gets me hella jealous, but but it's like just like small. She sent me a video this morning of my two boys just standing by the field, on, you know, on the edge of the field in the road, and like picking up rocks and throwing it into the field. And I was like, I was mesmerized by this silly video. It's like one of the best things I've seen in the last month. And it's like, and then exactly what you just said, it came up like, you know, because they love this, man. It's like picking up rocks and just throwing it into the bush. And that's what boys, you know, that's what kids are made for, like being out there doing stuff. Like the other thing is like on top of, you know, the attack of information on the family. It's like, you know, when we were younger, like I grew up in the late 80s, like 90s, all that stuff. And when we were younger, we could actually up until probably like when I left school, man, it's even a couple of years after I left school, it was like safe to be in the streets. You know, it's like my friends and I would flip and get on our bicycles, and we'd like ride in the streets and up until like 2 a.m, bro. It's like you don't have to worry about people, you know, about abductions, about like violence, about fights. You know, our parents didn't have to worry about those things. So I think that's also like kind of a societal attack on family. Is like,
But
it's
do you know
not
what
safe
is
anymore.
But you know what's interesting about that is that in most of the middle classes areas that we live in, it actually is still safe to do that. But I think the real attack on families is the attack on is the idea that parents have to be there 100% of the time.
Oh yeah, I hear you.
And this is also kind of attached to the information stuff, because we read a lot about abductions, often not even locally, often it's like overseas stories that happen. But we read so much about it, we listen to all like the true crime podcasts about this girl that got kidnapped in some, you know, Midwest town in the States, whatever. So we live in fear of these things happening, but actually statistically they're unlikely to happen. So so kids could still do that. But the problem is, because other parents are scared, it works well when there are lots of kids doing it. Like, it's safe. If you lived in an area where there were 20 kids that were riding around all the time, you wouldn't have a problem with it. But because it's only your kid, it is hard then to justify letting your kid run free by themselves.
That's such a good point, man. Such a good point.
So it is hard to be, you almost need, like, you need the parents in the community all to say, you know, all 10 families to say, we're going to let our kids play on this field. And to make us feel safe, one Omar is going to look through the window every now and again just to make sure that everything's legit. But generally, you know, kids of, you know, especially by junior school age, they know, like, wait a second, that's a strange looking man, we better go home. And the problem is that, and I'm seeing this with younger, like, people in their 20s, people born after 2000, when helicopter parenting started to happen. This is what was like, where parents were so controlled. They have no street smarts. They don't know how to cross a road. They don't know how to interact in public. They don't know when, you know, like, I know if I'm walking down the road, if someone's about to try and mug me, or someone looks like they might, like, I know what to do in that situation, because I've had to learn that as a child. We're actually depriving our children of of these learning opportunities.
And that's part of the development. I mean, that's part of you know, development. Exactly what you're saying. It's like, we are breeding, we are, out of our living in fear, we are breeding fear in our kids to actually go out alone into the street, because my kids wouldn't go out into the street alone, because I'm always with them when they do. So now when I'm not with them, they're like, oh my word, what's going to happen?
How do we, you know, how do we do this? How do we
you know, a lion's going to come out from the mountain. And it's like,
exactly. But, like, and this idea that on every street corner, there's like someone waiting to abduct your kids. Like, that's just not, it's just not true. But again, if my kid was the only kid playing in the field, that would be worrying. If he was with 10 other kids, I wouldn't be
not as much.
You understand the social hierarchy, right? So if you're a younger kid, you can't talk nonsense to an older kid, because there's going to be issues, right? But and when there is a social issue, when there is like an argument, a disagreement, when there's kids by themselves, they sort it out, right? They figure out a way, like, through weird social ways. This is how we're going to decide this issue. This is how we're going to work out the issue. What happens when you have mom and dad sitting on the bench watching all of this happen, right? If I'm a child and I have an argument with someone, they won't let me kick their ball around, what's the first thing I do? I go run to mommy and daddy, and mommy and daddy sort it out for me. So I never learn how to sort out social issues or deal with disagreements socially. And again, we see this where people don't know how to disagree properly. They don't know how to engage properly, and they also don't know their place. And I know this sounds horrible, but it's like, if you're just starting in a company, like, maybe you shouldn't be talking in the meeting. Maybe you should just be listening right now. Like, but because we make our children out to, like, maybe not us, but there was this generation of parents just before us where it's like, my child is like this wonderful, precious flower that I have to protect above everything. And so no wonder why they feel like they're a precious flower. Like, no, you're not. You are just a person in the world with other people, and you need to understand that. So I do think we are missing that, and I don't know what the answer is, because
Yeah,
I'm not going to be the first one to send my kids out by themselves.
No, man, I think that's the thing. It's like a lot of the way we parent our kids are, it's like that saying, the highway to hell is paved with good intentions. You think you're doing good, but you're actually doing them a disservice. And it's again another saying is like, if you teach a man how to fish, he can feed himself.
Yes.
Like what we're doing to our kids is we're giving them the fish every day. It's like, just here you go, here you go, here you go. And then they never learn. I never learn how to, in practicality fish for themselves. And on that topic, it's something that we learned as kids, like on the topic of the company, for instance. I sat in on a meeting with a company that I'm working with now. I just started working with them. So I'm not an employee even. I'm just like, a service provider to them. And I sat in on their management meeting on a Zoom, and I sat there for 2 hours and didn't say a word. And I was like, okay. And it got uncomfortable to me. It's like, okay, I need to say something. I need to say something. And then like, okay, but don't, it's like, but that's the thing. Like when that uncomfortability comes, I have the experience and the know-how to, okay, just suppress that. That's not important. Like that's less important than you just like knowing your place. Exactly what you're saying. And whereas, the youth coming through now, they don't know that. They don't know like that. They don't have that wisdom of like, okay, keep quiet, play your part, know your place, all that stuff. So I think that's a really cool point.
Yeah, and then the opposite's also true, right? Because then they also don't know when they should speak, and when they do have a place, and when they do have a right to like. So it's all kind of out of whack and out of sync, So with that example, let's just say now it's the 12th meeting that you've been sitting in, and you do have a knowledge about what they're talking about, and you have been dealing with this particular issue for 7-8 years, whatever. Like to know, actually, wait, I do have something valuable to say, and it's worth me saying this, because you, like you say, you have the experience, you have that social experience to know. So when I say know your place, I don't even mean that as a negative, I also mean as a positive. Like know that there are places that you have a right to speak up and to have power, and know that there are places where maybe just
man, I think kind of the problem is like, and this is another, it's another modern issue. And it ties to everything that we've been talking about over, for the last half an hour, is like a FOMO, fear of missing out. And that's the thing. Like I was sitting in this meeting and I was thinking to myself, like, what if I missed the opportunity to say something that could secure my position here, for instance? And then and I didn't act on it, but like 2 minutes before the meeting ended, the MD of the company told me, like, I'm going to send you another link now after this meeting and we can talk. And I was like, okay, cool. And I spoke to her, and she asked me, like, what do you think about what you heard? So I got my opportunity to speak, and I got it, and I got a private audience with the managing director of the company,
much more impactful moment.
Exactly, it's way more valuable than giving my 2 cents within the meeting and being perceived maybe as like out of place or insignificant or whatever. So like that's the thing, and that's where patience comes in. Like, be patient. You'll get your turn.
Yeah, and as you say that, of course, I'm trying to interrupt you, so I apologize.
Cool, man. No worries.
I was just thinking that's also why I really have a distaste for like these business bro social media accounts, especially on like LinkedIn and a lot on Instagram, where they're like, you got to be first, you got to be grinding, you got to be pushing hard. And this is something that we as adults struggle with, and I have no idea how our kids are going to cope with this, because everything you see on social media is a lie, right? Like it's maybe not a complete lie, but it's an omission of the full picture.
Yeah.
So we struggle with the idea that like everyone that we follow on social media, on Instagram, they seem to have these perfect homes that are always tidy. The kitchens are beautiful. The kids' rooms are like perfect kind of beige and grays and whatever. And what I keep reminding myself and reminding my wife is that if you had to turn the camera 180 degrees, you would see the mess.
Yeah.
You would, if the camera was, if it was a film camera and was rolling all the time, you would see all the arguments that the husband and wife are having. You would see how sad they are. You would see the struggles that they have. But no one posts that. No one wants to post that.
Yeah, man. And that's a filter. It's, it's a facade. Yes. And it's like, it would be the worst movie ever. Like,
yes, we wouldn't watch that. No one would watch that.
Exactly. Imagine a movie just nothing happens to the character. It's like just chilling at the pool, just that kind of driving in his Ferrari,
scrolling through. Yeah, no, exactly. And people wouldn't, we don't want that, and so we don't post that either. And my worry is that our kids are growing up in this world where everything they see are perfect people doing perfect things.
Yeah.
And their lives are not going to be like that. I mean, the people who are posting those things, their lives aren't like that. But our kids are going to feel like they need to attain those things. They need to be, if they're an entrepreneur, they have to be always grinding up at 4 a.m., gymming at 4:30, and then doing like closing 5 business deals by 6 a.m. That kind of nonsense. Like, no, they don't. They don't do that. Yeah. And if they do it, if you speak to them in a year's time, those people are burnt out and broke. So the FOMO thing is a real worry for me. I'm from the way my brain works, I'm very pragmatic, sometimes to a point to it being a problem, but I'm very practical. So I tend to see through the nonsense.
Yeah.
But we have to remember that all of these social media and I'm a digital marketer, right? So I'm kind of speaking against my own industry right now.
Yeah.
But we have to remember that all of these social media channels are designed to make you feel bad, because when you feel bad, you stay on the channel longer. Like that is so all of the outrage, all of the bad feelings, all of the FOMO, that is there on purpose. It's not like they made Instagram and they were like, oh, whoops, we make people feel bad. They're like, no, we know they know what they're doing. They made it that way. So we really, as parents, and I mean, to bring it back to like, talking about your daughter with the phone or our kids with social media, or whatever, we really have to be the space where we need to be talking to them about these new technologies. We need to be talking to them about the way media works. And the only way we could do that is if we're educated ourselves. And that is my worry. I think there are a lot of parents out there who they don't know what's going on Instagram. They don't know what's going on TikTok.
Yeah.
They don't know how half of their phone works.
Yeah.
And now you're supposed to be talking to your child about these things. Like, no, you can't. You have to be, so I tell parents, you got to be on TikTok. I'm sorry. You have to be.
Yeah.
Now with the new Threads channel that Meta started. You have to be on it. You have to be on Instagram. You don't have to use it, but you have to be aware of what's going on these channels so that you can help your child navigate this very complex world that they're now.
Yeah, man, I completely agree. I saw an interview from, who was it? Like, it was one of the founders of Instagram or something. And this guy just said, like, he's never going to let his kid go on there. Never. Yes. And he's one of the, it's like, but it's like you talking about like your industry and how detrimental it can be if not managed or if not, if not controlled. And I think that's the thing. It's like, yes, you can't go to the extremes all the time, but like being involved. And I think like that's another, mistake we as parents make, is like just being happy that our kids are off our backs for an half an hour and just, just like sticking the iPad or the phone or, sticking them in front of the TV. And that's like, again, it's like an issue that we've created ourselves by helicopter parenting. I like that term. because we, we cultivate this needy individual, and then after a while we just want to get them off our backs. Like just give me a second, man. Just let me go to the toilet alone. It's like
100%, as opposed to just letting them be bored and letting them play outside. There's, and I understand there's obviously levels to this. I'm not saying let your 18-month-old run around the pool. I'm not saying that. Like, we still have to have protection. We still have to protect them from themselves and from the outside world. But I do feel like we've gone way, way too far. I mean, I remember a friend of mine had a child. This was probably about 5 years ago. And I was talking to him about what his, about fatherhood and what his expectations are.
Yeah.
And he was just basically saying, I'm never letting her out of my sight. I'm never, like, I'm going to, she's going to be daddy's little girl. She's going to be she's going to be on my hip forever. And I'm like, okay, I understand that you want to be protective, but do you hear what you're saying? You're basically shielding her from any growth or development or individuality.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, but I'd rather her be safe. I'm like, but and this is the problem, right? It's like, safe from what?
Yeah.
Because yes, you might be protecting her from the tiny chance of something really bad happening, but you're causing a lot of other harm. So, we're and I think that's what we don't do, right? We go, I'd rather make 100% certain that my child never gets kidnapped, but we don't think about all of that harm we're doing in teaching them how to survive in the world without us.
Dude, the problem is with this, and I've been, I've also spoken to a bunch of people on this topic. Like, the problem is, like, I get it. Again, like you said, I get that. But the problem is, what happens when you're not there? And that's the thing that people don't think about. Like, you have to equip your kids to operate without you. And I've got an analogy. Like, if you go into training to go to war, like, let's say you join the army, but your instructor is always with you. When there's a danger, he kills it. When there's a bomb, he disarms it. When
he loads your gun for you.
He does everything. And now he gets shot and killed. What do? You're going to die, man. So he's not equipping you to go to war. He's just taking you with them to war. And that's the thing. Like, we have to equip our kids. Like, we have to equip them to leave us. Like, because that's going to happen, that's going to happen. They're going to leave. Like, when they get older, they're going to leave. And then they need to be ready to go into the world. And I think that's kind of the premise of parenting. It's like, prepare your kids to go into the world.
And you know what? I think this has a bigger thing as well, because I think we've taken ownership over our children in a way that maybe other generations didn't. And I know people always say, oh, that's my child, that's my kid, that's my daughter, that's my son. But this idea that they are exactly what you're saying, they're only with us, they're only ours, quote unquote ours, for a few years, 2 decades, if that. And then they're their own people and they have to do their own thing.
Yeah.
I think we've kind of lost that thinking. And I've often tried to change the way I even say things. I often try to stop saying Liam is my son, and I try to say I'm Liam's dad.
Oh yeah.
Because the ownership switches then, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't belong to me. I belong to him until he no longer needs me. And then he goes off into the world. Because he's exactly right. That's what parenting used to be, right? Like that it was about training your child to cope in the world so that they can go off and be adults and have their own families and live their own lives completely. And if they want us to be part of their lives as adults, great. But we're not running their lives as adults anymore.
Yeah.
And I almost wonder if people having kids now don't think about what this person will be like in 30 years time.
Yeah.
Or 20 years time.
No, but honestly, I think you've got a great point, because I think that would actually be, again, this seems counterproductive, but actually it's more beneficial to do the, you know, kind of the opposite of what we're doing. Because
Yeah.
if you give your son or your daughter the opportunity, the free will, if I can put it that way, to choose, like give them the decision, they are going to choose you. But if you force yourself upon them, they might not choose you. And they might just run away and be like, oh my goodness, you know, I'm free from this prison, you know. It's like,
but then you have someone who's like moved away and moved as far away from you as possible without any skills to be a functioning adult. And so I totally agree with you. I feel like it's like holding water in your hand, right? Like the tighter you hold it, the less water you have.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what we're doing with parenting. We're holding this cup of water in our hand, and eventually we want to pour as much of that water into its own cup as we can eventually do in 18 years time.
Yeah.
But again, I think we forget that child is not our child. That child, well, it is our child. That child does not belong to us.
Yeah.
That child is a human being. Does not belong. Like, we've stopped using terms like that. Sorry, I have a cold.
No, cool.
And we need to stop acting as if this child is
your
not
property.
A house.
Yeah,
exactly. It's not property. It's not something that we've now, we're doing mortgage repayments, and in 20 years time we get to own this thing. No, we're doing payments so that it can own itself and do its own thing. And so we need to be thinking more like that. Like, what does this person need? Exactly what you say. When I am no longer around, which will happen, like, God willing, my child will be at my funeral. Like, that's what I don't want. The other way is worse. The other way is terrible. Eventually this child will have to be self-sufficient, and that is a privilege as well, that I have friends whose children are disabled and will probably be dependent on them for the rest of their lives in some capacity. So it's actually a real privilege to have children that you can be like, I can see a future where you no longer need me.
Yes.
And so we need to lean into that, and we need to like help them and grasp that with both hands, grasp that privilege with both. Sorry, I can rant about this for
no, man. I think it's such an important point. I think it's such an important topic, because in making your kids reliant on you, you're doing them a disservice, and you're actually doing the opposite of what you think you're doing, because they are most like the first opportunity. And I've seen this, man. I've worked with children since 2008, man. I've been working with kids. I was in rugby, so I was coaching and working with kids, and the thing that I saw the most was like the clingy parents, the parents that the issues we are talking about, the parents that do those things are actually the parents that drive away their kids the most. Because the kids, again, like what you say, they've been created. They were made with like their own will, their own needs, their own desires. And now what these parents are doing indirectly is forcing their needs, their desires, their wants on this kid. And there comes a point where you like, just leave me the hell alone. Like, I am going to do my own thing. And that's where you get like kids running away from their parents and never seeing their parents again. Or maybe maybe giving them a call like once a year. That's when that stuff happens, is because parents were too clingy. I mean, to take it to the extreme, if you watch like these documentaries on murderers and serial killers, it's like it was parents that were too much involved in their children's lives.
Often it is that. So I'm a parent. I know what those anxieties are like. I know that all you want to do is just keep your little baby close to your chest and protect them from everything, especially if you've been hurt yourself. So like, parents are also, we're dealing with our own traumas and our own upbringing and our own issues. And so I know that we want to protect that little one from all harm, from any bad feelings.
Mm.
But unfortunately, the tough stuff, the difficult things, the painful things, that's where growth happens.
Mm.
And so I find that that's the hardest thing about parenting, is knowing when to protect from pain and when to allow the pain to happen so that growth can happen. You know, so like
Yeah.
where is it trauma and where is it growth? I don't know the answer to that. And that's where I find we really struggle as parents.
Yeah, man. You say it, you know, it reminds me of something that I saw from Jordan Peterson, and he says, like, the growth comes in the dangerous things. And that's like when your kid is climbing a tree, don't stop him, let him climb. When your kid is climbing on a chair that's wobbly, don't stop him, let him climb it. And if he falls, he's going to learn from it. And if he doesn't fall, he's also going to learn from it, because it's dangerous and your senses are heightened. I mean, this guy's a clinical psychologist, but so he goes into it way deeper than I'm doing now. But again, it's like what you're saying. It's like even us, I mean, in the tough times, that's when we learn, man. That's when that's when the growth happens. That's when we learn, like, not to do this again. Like, and if you do it again, you're an idiot. You know, it's kind of that thing. Like,
that's on you. That's on you this time.
Exactly. It's like people always, like when my kids grew up, I think I'm a little bit more of a hard parent, but when my kids grew up, like someone would, like my kid would maybe climb up onto a table or something. I'm just using an example. Sure. And someone would say, like, he's going to fall. And then I'd say, like, then he won't do it again. And the thing is, like, 90% of the time they didn't fall. But that one time they did, they never climbed onto that table again, you know? And
or if they did, they know how to not fall. That's, you know, so
they go lie on the table.
Yeah. And look, like, again, if it's climbing on the table, that's one thing. If it's juggling sharp knives and they're 3 years old, obviously we're going to stop. So I think that's where we always have to be careful, is that I do feel like there aren't a lot of absolutes in parenting. And I've had to learn this about being judgy with parents and about the way they choose. So for instance, you've given your daughter a cell phone. You know your child, you know what she can handle, and you know what your family can manage and how you're going to protect her and how you're going to do all those things. We've chosen not to give our children phones for a while. But again, different children, I know what they're capable of. I know what the dangers are, you know, that they're very addicted to screens as it is. And giving them another screen is going to, like, cause real chaos. Now, some people might look at you and go, oh, I can't believe he's giving his daughter a phone. And I've had to learn to go, well, no, that he's a reasonable, wise father who understands his children better than I understand his children. So I can't judge the way he's doing it, you know. And there aren't many cases where it's like outright abuse. So let's just be a little bit easier on, like, oh, that family gives their kids 2 hours of screen time, even though they should only have 1 hour of screen. Like, my guy, you don't know anything about what's going on in that family home. You know, and could they do better? Yes. Are you going to be the one that comes in to help them do better? Are you going to come in and say, hey, instead of giving your kids 2 hours screen time, I'll babysit for you so you can go do the other thing you need to do? You know, like, so again, from a and I think this also ties into the whole helicopter parenting, letting our kids play together. I think where we've let this generation of kids down is that we've allowed community to break apart even more. I'm not sure if we've allowed it or if it's happened and we can't stop it. Like, I'm not sure who's responsible for that, but I think the reality is we don't have enough spaces where, and especially for dads like you and me, very few spaces where we can talk and engage with each other in a community way, where there's trust, where if I see, hey, I can see you're struggling because, you know, I can see that your kids are getting a lot of screen time, as an example, because you've gotten this extra work that you have to do and you don't have any other choice. Well, you know what? I have some free time. Why don't your kids come play with my kids in our garden across the road? you know, so instead of all of our kids having screen time, actually they can play together in my front garden.
Yeah.
And you and I know each other well enough to go, I trust Terrence.
Yeah.
I know what he's about. So I don't have to freak out that my children has been cared for by this other parent for an hour. We've completely lost that, unfortunately. I'm quite lucky that I have developed and maintained friendships with other people who are parents. So for instance, we're going away next week with another family who are very close friends of ours. And because our kids know each other, because we know them, like, there's going to be no screens. The kids are going to be running around. They're going to have a week of what you were describing with your boys throwing stones into the field. They're going to have a week of that. And we could do that because there's 4 parents. We trust each other. We're in community with each other. And that's, man, if we can get more of that, I think that's like a superpower that we would be able to access for our parenting.
Man, I think that you bring up such a good point, because it ties into what the message of Huntsman is. Like, Huntsman is like, it's focused on men, but the larger focus is coming back to the fundamentals, like making life simple again, because simpler is easy, it's better, and like exactly what you're saying. Like, I had friends, like, Fridays after school, I wouldn't even go home Fridays after school. I'd go directly to his house, and all my dad expected was, like, give him a call and tell him, listen, Dad, I'm at my friend's place, and he's like, cool, man, see you Sunday. That's kind of the thing. And it's like, life was simpler back then, but we are capable of simplifying society again. But we need people and we need voices, and that's why I love what you're saying about, like, yes, we don't have all the answers. Like, I can't give you a book on this is the perfect parent and you would have the perfect kid if you follow these steps. But we can start the conversation. And I think that's the most important thing, just having these conversations, because a lot of times, like, again, with the disconnect, we don't talk about these things. We don't realize that, there's probably a million other dads going through the exact same thing that I'm going through. But if I actually start talking about this, like, I'd realize, so shit, man, I'm not alone. It's thank God, thank goodness I'm not alone. There's someone else going through this. Like, there's someone else thinking again, and this comes to the, the other side. It's like, there's other parents thinking the things that we are talking about now, but they don't know how to start the conversation. And even as far as whether they can start the conversation, and I think that's the important thing. It's just like, let's open up the line of communication. Let's give other parents and other people that platform to actually communicate what they're going through, and then we could possibly come up with some solutions to these issues that we're facing.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's where I totally agree, and that's where it starts. You can't build those relationships, and you can't build that community without having these conversations that you're having. And that's, I think, the flip side of, we're talking about social media and FOMO. I think the flip side of where we can use that power for good is by using these channels to have these conversations. So instead of going, ooh, I mean, I don't think anyone thinks this, but, oh, Terrence is like this perfect dad who never gets anything wrong. Having Afrodaddy as one of the channels, for instance, where it's like, hey, I'm going to show you where I've messed up. I'm going to show you what I struggle with. I'm going to show you where I'm confused about. And my hope is that people have that exact reaction to go, oh, okay, he's struggling with this. It's okay that I'm struggling with this. Maybe if we struggle together, by our powers, like Captain Planet, where we combined all our powers, we could find a solution.
That reference, that's cool.
that just shows you how old I am.
No, dude, but yeah, both of us.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's where the power can come in, and I think I love the idea of it's, because that is simple, right? That's what you would talk to your neighbor over the fence. Okay, we don't necessarily have a fence to talk to a neighbor over, but we have Zoom, we have social media. This should be our fence, that we can use to do that yeah, that back to basics, man. Back
Yeah,
to
man.
like how communities were made,
Yeah.
and kept people safe. So
You know,
I agree.
I'm gonna use I'm gonna steal from Trump here, you know, that
Oh dear.
make America great again slogan that the world hates so much. I'm just gonna say make life simple again.
Make life simple again. No,
So
sir. That doesn't quite work, but yeah.
yeah, but anyway, man,
Yeah.
our time is running out again.
Yeah.
We I enjoyed this conversation. I think there's so much more to say on this topic. But before we close, I just wanted to give you the opportunity to, like, you know, share with people where they can find you. I'll obviously link everything in
Sure.
the description, but share with people where they can check you out, and
Yeah.
yeah.
But like, firstly, just thank you so much for having me on. I love having these kinds of conversations, and like we were saying at the end here, like it's so good to talk to a dad who has the same
Mm.
experiences, who's struggling through the same nonsense that
Yeah,
I'm
man.
struggling through. So,
Yeah.
so thank you for hosting the space. Thank you for making the space available. Um, the best place to find Afrodaddy is to go to the website afrodaddyonline.com. And I also host a rival podcast with my
Yeah.
co-host Shawn Loots. It's called Have You Asked Your Dad?
Mm.
So if you search for Have You Asked Your Dad anywhere on the social medias or wherever you listen to podcasts, it's basically asking questions to dads that often we don't get asked,
Yeah.
like how do you cope with being sick, or
Mm.
what do you want to do on your day off? I know what you do on
Mm.
your day off because you have
Yeah.
to, but what would you like to do on your day off?
Yes.
um what was it like when you saw your child for the first
Oh,
time?
yeah.
What did you feel when you found out you're going to be a dad? Like, these are
Mm.
questions that dads don't get asked, and so
Mm.
that's what the podcast is about.
Mm.
That's kind of another passion project of mine. Yeah, so those are the two best places to find Afrodaddy stuff, is
Yeah.
afrodaddyonline.com and Have You Asked Your Dad?
Yeah, man. So just on the point of Afrodaddy's podcast and channel and stuff, it's like um the work that he's doing is really cool, and and it's obviously focused on fatherhood. So I've
Yeah.
watched some of his stuff, and I mean, the conversations we've had are always valuable and always golden. And I think that's so needed, needed in society, especially amongst men, because we're reluctant to talk about the things that we're going through. So just opening up that conversation and, you know, taking that kind of leap of being vulnerable to one another. And it cultivates so much more, you know, than the cliche that we think like it makes us look weak. It's actually a sign of strength. I believe it's the opposite of making you look weak. Being able to tell, you know, your friends or other guys, like, yes, man, I'm struggling with this thing. Like, how do you cope with that? How do you deal with this? Or not even looking for an answer, just talking about it helps. And the conversation, you know, because that's what happens in a good conversation. When you have a good conversation, you always get like revelations in it. You always get like these epiphanies, like, oh man, I never thought about that. Like, so that's
Yeah.
just the thing that makes conversation good. And if you can walk away from a conversation feeling like uplifted, then, you know, great. That's all it should be.
Yeah, that's the goal. That,
Yeah.
like, just to make Aphrodite's goal is always, if I can make one dad feel less alone,
Mm.
I've won. Like,
Yeah.
that's my ultimate goal. And so,
Awesome.
nothing big. I've kept it simple, just
Yeah.
like
Awesome,
Die
man.
Huntsman.
Love it, dude. Thank you so much for coming on, bro. I had a really good conversation. I think it was a really good conversation, and I had a
I enjoyed
lack
it.
of time. We laughed and we got serious, and
Yeah,
we
it went through waves.
yeah, man. So, but anyway, thank you so much for coming on board, Terrence. And yeah, go check out Terrence's channels and socials and all that stuff. I'll link everything below. Thank you all for tuning in. And again, like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell. I'll say it in an Afrikaans accent. Like and comment and subscribe. En slaan die klokkie. Thank you,
Love
buddy.
it. Thanks, man. Bye.
Cheers, dude.